A flyer in the wind. The toast popped up, startling Arthur. Tilly shrieked, a high-pitched sound that vibrated in his skull. Thomas, usually unflappable, flinched and clutched his Paddington bear tighter. Arthur hadn't slept properly in weeks. The nights a relentless replay of Clara's last days, each breath a labored rasp, each whispered word a precious, fading memory. Now, bleary-eyed and fueled by lukewarm coffee, he faced the daily gauntlet of breakfast with two 5-year-olds who were, through no fault of their own, miniature hurricanes of need. He slapped butter onto the toast, ignoring the smear that landed on the counter. Clara would have wiped it instantly, a silent, graceful movement born of habit and a deep-seated aversion to mess. Now, the counter was a battlefield of spilled milk and stray Cheerios. "Daddy, my toast is burnt," Tilly wailed, holding up a blackened corner. "Daddy, Paddington wants marmalade," Thomas mumbled, his voice barely audible above the clatter. Arthur sighed, a weary sound that seemed to deflate him further. He scraped the offending toast into the bin and started again, acutely aware of the emptiness beside him at the table. Clara always managed to make breakfast a joyful occasion, a symphony of laughter and gentle teasing. He just fell numb. He finally managed to assemble 2 acceptable pieces of toast, a feat that felt akin to scaling Everest. As he watched them eat, the silence descended again, heavy and suffocating. He knew they missed their mother, even if they couldn't articulate it fully. He missed her more than words could say. Later, after a chaotic morning of dressing, arguing over toys, and a near disaster with Tilly attempting to paint the dog, Arthur found himself at the kitchen table, a stack of bills mocking him from one corner. He needed help, desperately. He couldn't keep juggling work, the house, and the twins. He felt like he was failing them all. He pulled out a sheet of paper and a pen. He chewed on the end, the taste of ink bitter on his tongue. What did one even write in such a situation? How did you condense the enormity of his need into a few simple sentences? He started, crossed out, started again. Finally, after several attempts, he settled on something simple, direct. Nanny needed. Loving family seeks experienced nanny to care for twin 5-year-olds. Light housework required. Must be patient, reliable, and kind. References essential. Please contact Arthur Abernathy at phone number. He stared at the words, feeling a pang of guilt. It felt so impersonal, so clinical. He wanted to add something about Clara, about the warmth and love that had filled their home, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't. Not yet. He made several copies, his hand trembling slightly. He grabbed a roll of tape and headed out into the crisp autumn air. The wind whipped around him, scattering leaves across the pavement. He walked to the local park, the swings swaying gently in the breeze, a haunting reminder of happier days. He taped a flyer to the community board, its bright yellow paper a stark contrast to the weathered wood. He watched as the wind tugged at it, threatening to tear it loose. He smoothed it down, a futile gesture against the forces of nature. He posted another at the grocery store, another at the library. Each flyer felt like a small piece of his soul offered up to the unknown. As he turned to go home, he saw Mrs. Higgins, her silver hair neatly coiffed, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. She was carrying a casserole dish covered in foil. "Arthur, dear," she called out, her voice warm and familiar. "I thought you might appreciate a little something. Shepherd's pie. Clara always made the best, but I've tried my best to replicate it." He managed a weak smile. "Mrs. Higgins, that's so thoughtful of you." "Thank you." She studied his face, her expression softening with concern. "You look tired, Arthur. Are you managing all right?" He hesitated. He didn't want to burden her, but the dam inside him was threatening to break. "It's difficult," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "The twins and everything else. I just feel like I'm drowning." Mrs. Higgins reached out and squeezed his hand. Her touch was surprisingly strong, reassuring. "You're doing your best, Arthur. Don't be too hard on yourself. Clara would be so proud of you." Her words were like a balm to his wounded spirit. He felt a tear escape and quickly brushed it away. "I just miss her so much," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know, dear, I know," Mrs. Higgins said softly. "We all do. But you're not alone," Arthur. We're here for you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. She paused, glancing at the flyer he'd just posted. I see you're looking for a nanny. That's a good first step. She handed him the casserole dish. Now you go home and feed those little ones. And try to get some rest yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. He thanked her again, his heart a little lighter than it had been moments before. As he walked home, the wind snatched at another flyer, tearing a corner of the paper. He watched it flutter away, a tiny piece of hope lost in the swirling autumn air. He hoped, desperately, that someone would see the remaining scraps, that someone kind and capable would answer his call. He hoped that someone could help him bring a little bit of light back into his children's lives, and maybe, just maybe, back into his own. Lily's hopeful heart. The rhythmic thrum of the industrial sewing machine vibrated through Lily's fingertips, a monotonous pulse that mirrored the dull ache in her soul. Fabric, a drab gray destined to become factory uniforms, snaked under the needle, each perfect stitch a tiny act of rebellion against the crushing boredom. The air hung thick with lint and the metallic tang of oil, a sensory assault that did little to lift her spirits. Around her, the other seamstresses, faces etched with weariness, worked in a silent rhythm, their movements economical and precise. Lily often wondered about their lives, the stories hidden behind those tired eyes, but the unspoken rule of the factory was to keep your head down and your hands moving. Lunch was a meager sandwich eaten quickly in the break room, a sterile space smelling of stale coffee and disinfectant. Lily picked at her food, her appetite non-existent. She longed for something more, something that resonated with the music that constantly played in her head, a melody yearning to be released. The afternoon stretched on, an endless expanse of gray fabric and buzzing machines. As the quitting bell finally rang, a collective sigh swept through the room, a shared release from the day's drudgery. Lily packed her worn tote bag, the strap digging into her shoulder as she walked out into the bustling city street. She shuffled along, lost in the throng of people, each a blur of faces and hurried footsteps. The city was a symphony of noise, a chaotic mix of car horns, shouting vendors, and snippets of conversations. Lily usually found a strange comfort in the anonymity of it all, a feeling of being both connected and invisible. It was on a lamppost, plastered amongst a chaotic jumble of advertisements and community notices, that she saw it. A simple, handwritten flyer, the ink slightly faded and smudged around the edges. Nanny needed. Below, a brief description of the position and a phone number. Something tugged at her, an inexplicable pull she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just the promise of a different job, a way out of the soul-crushing factory. It was something else, a whisper of possibility, a sense of belonging. The word nanny conjured images of warmth, laughter, and the innocent faces of children, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environment she inhabited. Hesitantly, she reached out and traced the outline of a crayon drawing adorning the flyer. Two stick figures holding hands beneath a lopsided sun. A pang of longing resonated within her. She ripped the flyer from the lamppost, carefully folding it and tucking it into her pocket. Her apartment, a small, cramped space above a bustling bakery, was a sanctuary of sorts. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafted up from below, a comforting scent that often masked the other less pleasant smells of the city. The walls were thin, and she could often hear the muffled conversations of her neighbors, the rhythmic clatter of pots and pans, the occasional burst of laughter. After a quick dinner of instant noodles, Lily cleared a space amidst the clutter on her small table. She unfolded the flyer again, studying the phone number. A wave of nervousness washed over her. What did she know about being a nanny? Her own childhood had been far from idyllic, a constant shuffle between foster homes and fleeting moments of stability. But beneath the nervousness, a flicker of hope remained. She glanced at her battered guitar, propped against the wall, a faithful companion through countless lonely nights. Music was her solace, her escape, her way of connecting with the world. Maybe, just maybe, she could share that gift with someone else. Taking a deep breath, Lily picked up her guitar. The worn wood felt familiar and comforting beneath her fingertips. She closed her eyes, letting her fingers dance across the strings, searching for a melody. A few tentative notes evolved into a soft, lilting tune, a lullaby she vaguely remembered from her childhood. Her voice, clear and pure, filled the small apartment, soaring above the city's cacophony. The lyrics, simple and heartfelt, spoke of hope, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As she sang, she imagined two small children, their eyes wide with wonder, listening to her song. The fear hadn't completely gone, but as she sang, she felt something shift. The factory air dissipated from her lungs, replaced with the hope of something more. A hope that even she, Lily Meadows, with her own complicated past, could offer a child something beautiful. An interview and a connection. The Abernathy house loomed larger than Lily had imagined. Its gray stone facade, framed by towering oak trees, seemed to watch her approach. Each step crunched on the gravel driveway, the sound amplified in the sudden quiet that fell as she neared the door. She smoothed down her simple blue dress, the fabric suddenly feeling thin and inadequate. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the doorbell, its chime echoing from within like a distant, elegant song. The door opened to reveal a man who looked both older and younger than his age. His eyes, the color of warm honey, were kind but shadowed with a weariness that tugged at Lily's heart. "Miss Meadows?" he asked, his voice a low, gentle rumble. "Please come in. I'm Arthur Abernathy." He led her through a spacious hallway, sunlight streaming through arched windows and illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The air smelled faintly of beeswax and old books, a comforting, familiar scent. They entered a book-lined study, the walls a deep, calming green. A large, mahogany desk dominated the room, papers stacked neatly in organized piles. "Please, have a seat," Arthur said, gesturing towards a comfortable armchair. He settled behind his desk, his fingers steepled thoughtfully. "Thank you for coming. As you know from the flyer, I'm looking for someone to care for my children, Thomas and Tilly." Lily nodded, her palms sweating slightly. "Yes, Mr. Abernathy. I saw the flyer and I felt I had to apply." She paused, searching for the right words. "I love children, Mr. Abernathy. I always have, and I believe I can offer them a nurturing and loving environment." Arthur's gaze was intense, unwavering. "You have no formal experience, Miss Meadows. Why should I entrust you with my children?" Lily met his gaze directly, her voice clear and steady. "I may not have experience in the traditional sense, Mr. Abernathy, but I have a gentle heart and a patient nature. I believe that children need love and understanding above all else, and I can offer them that." She thought of her own difficult childhood, the lack of warmth and affection. She would give these children what she had always longed for. A flicker of something, hope, perhaps, crossed Arthur's face. "Thomas is sensitive. He misses his mother terribly. And Tilly needs attention. She's very energetic." Before Lily could respond, two small figures burst into the study. A boy with tousled brown hair and serious gray eyes clutched a half-finished wooden airplane. A little girl with bright, golden curls, wearing a sparkly pink dress and mismatched shoes, skipped ahead. "Papa, can we go to the park?" the little girl demanded, tugging on Arthur's sleeve. Arthur smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face. "Tilly, this is Miss Meadows. She's here to talk to Papa." Tilly stopped skipping and stared at Lily with wide, curious eyes. Thomas remained behind her, clutching his airplane. Lily knelt down, meeting their gazes. "Hello, Thomas." "Hello, Tilly," she said softly. "That's a very impressive airplane, Thomas." Thomas's eyes widened in surprise. He shuffled forward and held out the airplane for Lily to see. "It's not finished yet," he mumbled. "I need more glue." Tilly giggled. "It's going to crash." "No, it's not," Thomas retorted, his voice rising slightly. "It's going to fly to the moon." Lily smiled. "I think it will fly very high indeed. Perhaps we can find some glue later and make sure it's ready for its journey to the moon." Thomas's face lit up. "Really, Tilly, not wanting to be left out, grabbed Lily's hand. Will you play dress up with me? I have a princess dress and a fairy dress and a pirate dress. Lily laughed. A pirate dress? That sounds amazing. I would love to play dress up with you, Tilly. Within minutes, the study was transformed into a scene of joyful chaos. Thomas, forgetting his shyness, showed Lily his collection of building blocks, explaining his elaborate plans for a towering castle. Tilly, draped in a shimmering purple scarf and a plastic tiara, twirled around the room, singing a made-up song about unicorns and rainbows. Lily found herself swept up in their energy, her laughter mingling with theirs. She felt a connection to these children, a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. Arthur watched from behind his desk, a bemused expression on his face. He hadn't seen Thomas and Tilly so animated, so carefree, in a long time. The sadness in his eyes seemed to lessen, replaced by a glimmer of hope. After what felt like only a few minutes, but was probably closer to an hour, Arthur gently intervened. All right, you two, let's give Miss Meadows a little space. She's probably tired of playing with silly children. No, I'm not, Tilly protested, clinging to Lily's leg. I want her to stay. Me too, Thomas added, looking at Lily with pleading eyes. Lily smiled at them reassuringly. I have to go now, but I would love to come back and play again soon. As Arthur walked Lily to the door, he turned to her, his expression thoughtful. Thank you, Miss Meadows. You have a natural way with them. He paused, then added, I'll be in touch. Lily stepped out into the fading sunlight, a warmth spreading through her chest. The Abernathy house no longer seemed so intimidating. It felt welcoming. She glanced back at the window and saw two small faces peering out at her, their eyes filled with hope. First days and familiar echoes. Lily's first day erupted in a kaleidoscope of finger paint. Tilly, a whirlwind of blonde pigtails, shrieked with delight as she smeared crimson across a sheet of paper, the color blooming like a defiant poppy. Thomas, more reserved, meticulously crafted a blue sky, adding fluffy cotton ball clouds with painstaking precision. Lily, perched on a small stool between them, offered encouragement and gentle guidance, her own hands dusted with a rainbow of hues. The air hung thick with the scent of paint and childish glee. Arthur, drawn by the unusual chorus of laughter, leaned against the doorway of the playroom, a hesitant smile playing on his lips. He hadn't heard such unadulterated joy in this house since before. The sight of Lily, her face alight with genuine amusement as Tilly attempted to paint her nose purple, was a balm to his weary soul. He lingered, unnoticed, absorbing the scene like a man parched for rain. He noticed the way Lily listened intently to Thomas's explanations of his artistic choices, offering praise that felt both specific and heartfelt. It wasn't just babysitting, it was connection. The afternoon dissolved into a flurry of imaginary tea parties, complete with mismatched china and whispered secrets shared between Lily, Tilly, and a stuffed bear named Barnaby. Thomas, initially hesitant, was eventually coaxed into joining, his quiet giggles adding a new layer to the symphony of childhood sounds echoing through the house. Lily, with an intuitive understanding of their individual needs, managed to create an atmosphere where both children felt seen and cherished. As dusk began to paint the sky in shades of lavender and rose, Lily gathered the twins for story time. They settled into a plush armchair, Tilly nestled against Lily's side, her thumb tucked firmly in her mouth, while Thomas sat cross-legged on the floor, his eyes already wide with anticipation. Lily opened a worn copy of The Secret Garden, her voice transforming as she narrated the tale of Mary Lennox and her journey of healing and rediscovery. She didn't just read the words, she inhabited them, imbuing each character with a unique voice and personality. The twins were mesmerized, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the bedside lamp and the magic of Lily's storytelling. Arthur, still drawn to the sound of their happiness, found himself standing just outside the doorway again. He watched, his heart aching with a mixture of grief and gratitude. Lily's voice, gentle yet firm, echoed with a familiarity he couldn't quite place. It was more than just the lilt of her accent. There was a cadence, a rhythm that tugged at the edges of his memory. He frowned, trying to grasp the elusive connection, but it slipped away like smoke. Later, after the twins were tucked into bed, Lily found Arthur in the library, surrounded by stacks of papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up as she entered, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "They seem to really like you," he said, his voice a low rumble. Lily smiled. "They're wonderful children, Arthur. It's not hard to like them." He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Thank you, Lily. For everything. It's been a long time since I've heard them laugh like that." "They needed someone to play with," Lily said softly. "Someone to remind them that it's okay to be children." A silence hung between them, thick with unspoken emotions. Arthur's gaze lingered on Lily's face, searching, questioning. "You seem to know just what they need," he finally said, his voice laced with curiosity. "It's remarkable." Lily simply shrugged, her eyes darting away. "I just try to listen, and to see them, really see them." The next few days settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lily established a routine, balancing playtime with structured activities, ensuring that the twins felt both loved and challenged. She took them on walks in the garden, teaching them the names of the flowers and the habits of the birds. She helped Thomas build elaborate Lego castles, patiently untangling his creations when they inevitably collapsed. She indulged Tilly's love of dress-up, transforming the playroom into a makeshift stage where they performed elaborate plays for an imaginary audience. Arthur, though still consumed by his work, found himself drawn to the sounds of their laughter, seeking out glimpses of their joyful interactions. He started joining them for dinner, listening attentively to the twins' animated raskazu of their day, feeling a sense of connection he hadn't thought possible again. He noticed the small details. Lily's ability to anticipate the twins' needs before they even voiced them, the way she could diffuse a tantrum with a gentle word or a playful distraction, the quiet confidence she exuded in her role as caregiver. It was as if she had always been a part of their family, a missing piece finally found. But it also felt like something else. The feeling that Lily was in some way reteaching him how to be a parent after losing his wife. One evening, as he tucked Thomas into bed, the boy looked up at him with wide, earnest eyes. "Daddy," he whispered, "Lily sings the same lullabies Mommy used to sing." Arthur froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He stared down at his son, his mind reeling. "What did you say, Thomas?" Thomas yawned, his eyelids drooping. "Lily sings Mommy's songs," he mumbled, his voice already fading into sleep. "The ones about the moon and the stars." Arthur stood there for a long moment, the weight of his grief suddenly compounded by a chilling sense of unease. How could Lily know those songs? They were more than just lullabies. They were a part of his wife's history, a legacy passed down through generations. The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered, casting a long shadow over the fragile peace that had begun to blossom in the Abernathy household. The lullaby's secret. The Abernathy house, usually brimming with afternoon sunshine and the twins' laughter, now echoed with a hollow sadness. Bedtime had become a battleground. Thomas, clutching a well-worn teddy bear missing an eye, whimpered, "I want Mommy." Tilly, draped in a princess dress 5 sizes too big, mirrored his distress, her bright eyes brimming with tears. Arthur knelt between their beds, his own weariness a heavy cloak. He smoothed Tilly's unruly curls, the silk of the dress whispering against his hand. She's watching over you, sweethearts. She always is. But I want her here," Tilly wailed, throwing her small arms around his neck. Her grip tightened, a desperate plea. Arthur's throat constricted. He hated these nights, hated the way their grief clawed at the raw edges of his own. He tried to remember the silly stories he used to tell, the ones that always chased away the bedtime monsters. Tonight, the words felt flat, hollow. He fumbled with the worn copy of Good Night Moon, but the familiar rhythm of the words offered no solace. "Daddy, read it like Mommy did." Thomas sniffled, burying his face in the bear. Arthur closed the book, the simple request a punch to the gut. He couldn't. He just couldn't. "How about we build a fort tomorrow? A really big one, with blankets and pillows and everything. Tilly shook her head, the princess dress rustling. I want Mommy to sing. The request hung in the air, thick and heavy. He hadn't sung to them since she was gone. His voice felt rusty and used, the melodies tangled in a web of grief. He was failing them. He could see it in their tear-streaked faces, in the tight set of their small shoulders. He was supposed to be their shield, their protector, and all he could offer was a hollow promise of a fort. A soft knock on the open doorway startled him. Lily stood there, her expression a mixture of concern and hesitant understanding. She held a steaming mug in her hands, the scent of chamomile drifting into the room. I thought maybe a cup of tea might help, she offered quietly, her gaze flickering between Arthur and the twins. Arthur managed a weak smile. Thank you, Lily, but I think they just need their mother. The words tasted like ash. Lily stepped into the room, her presence a calming balm. She didn't try to argue, didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she sat on the edge of Thomas's bed, her movements gentle and deliberate. Do you remember any of Mommy's songs, Lily? Tilly asked, her voice barely a whisper. Lily paused, her brow furrowed in thought. I think I might. A little bit. She closed her eyes for a moment, her lips moving silently, as if searching for a forgotten melody. Then, softly, hesitantly, she began to sing. The tune was simple, almost childlike, carried on a thread of pure, clear soprano. The words were in a language Arthur didn't recognize, a lilting cadence that sounded both ancient and strangely familiar. It wasn't the lullaby his wife used to sing. It was different, something else entirely. Sewell, 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 Arun, ta Emo Croy go Bronak. The twins stilled, their cries subsiding as if a switch had been flipped. Thomas loosened his grip on the teddy bear, his eyes fluttering closed. Tilly, still clinging to Arthur's neck, relaxed against him, her small body growing heavy. Lily's voice filled the room, weaving a spell of peace and tranquility. Arthur felt a strange pull, a sense of something ancient and comforting resonating deep within him. He watched, mesmerized, as the twins' breathing evened out, their faces softening in sleep. When a last note faded, the room was filled with a profound silence. Only the gentle rise and fall of the twins' chests broke the stillness. Lily opened her eyes, her gaze meeting Arthur's. There was a question in her expression, a silent plea for understanding. Where did you learn that? Arthur asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily's brow furrowed. I don't know. It just came to me, like a whisper from a dream. I think my grandmother sang it to me when I was very small, but I barely remember her. She shivered slightly, pulling the cardigan she wore tighter around herself. It's funny, I haven't thought of it in years. Arthur stared at her, a swirl of emotions churning within him. Gratitude, yes, but also a growing unease. It wasn't just the song itself, but the effect it had on the children. It was as if Lily held a key to a world he no longer understood, a world connected to his wife, to the very fabric of their family. He stood, carefully detaching Tilly from his neck and laying her gently on the bed. He pulled the covers over them both, tucking them in with a tenderness that felt both natural and strangely inadequate. Thank you, Lily, he said again, his voice still hushed. You have a remarkable gift. Lily nodded, her eyes downcast. They just needed a little peace. He knew it was more than that. He felt it in his bones. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the core, that the lullaby held a secret that was somehow intertwined with Lily's past and the tragedy that had shattered his life. A song from the past. The final notes of the lullaby lingered, shimmering like a mirage above the sleeping children. Arthur remained stock still, his hand suspended near Tilly's hair, a comforting caress arrested midair. That melody, so painfully familiar, crashed through his grief-stricken haze like a rogue wave. He knew it, intimately, not some ubiquitous nursery rhyme, but a Lara's own composition. A tune she'd hummed during quiet moments, reserved for Thomas, Tilly, and him alone. His breath caught. He pivoted, eyes fixed on Lily, who was collecting the scattered storybooks. Lamplight painted long shadows across her face, obscuring her features. That song, he began, voice rough, barely audible. He swallowed, fighting for composure. Where did you learn it? Lily paused, her movements checked. She placed the books on the shelf with painstaking care, avoiding his gaze. Just an old lullaby, she offered, her tone uncharacteristically hesitant. I don't recall where I picked it up. Ages ago, somewhere. No, Arthur countered, closing the distance between them. A scent, lavender laced with an indefinable floral note, wafted from her, a phantom echo of a cherished perfume. That isn't just any lullaby. Alara, my wife, wrote it. It was never shared beyond our family. He watched her intently, searching for any telltale sign, any flicker of recognition. But her face was a placid lake, unreadable. Only a faint tremor betrayed the turmoil within. I don't understand, she stammered, finally meeting his gaze. Her eyes, usually bright and clear, were now clouded with confusion, bordering on apprehension. I truly don't know where I heard it. It just surfaced. Surfaced, Arthur echoed, incredulity sharpening his tone. He raked a hand through his hair, the gesture frantic, unbelieving. This couldn't be real. A bizarre coincidence? A trick of the light, born of exhaustion? He advanced, casting her in his shadow. Think, Lily. This is vital. Did someone teach it to you? A relative? A friend? Someone who knew Alara? Lily flinched slightly, retreating against the bookshelf. His intensity seemed to unsettle her. No, she insisted, her voice barely there. I don't know anyone who knew your wife. I swear I don't. I've never been around here before. The air thrummed with unspoken questions, thick with the weight of his bereavement and her inexplicable link to it. He glimpsed something flicker in her eyes, a fleeting memory, perhaps, or merely his own desperate hope mirrored back. But the song, he pressed, refusing to yield. How could you possibly know it? Lily shook her head, brow furrowed in concentration. She closed her eyes briefly, as though attempting to conjure the memory, to reassemble fragments of something lost. When she opened them, they held a disarming bewilderment that chilled him more profoundly than any deliberate falsehood. It's like it's always been there, she whispered, voice trembling. Like it's part of me. I can't explain it. He yearned to believe her, craved a plausible explanation for this impossible situation. But the truth, whatever it was, felt far more intricate, far more disturbing than his darkest imaginings. He recoiled, creating space between them. The warmth he had begun to feel, the tentative hope that she might be the answer to his aching void, dissipated, replaced by a clammy dread. He no longer saw a caregiver, but an enigma, a locked box deceptively wrapped. He needed answers, urgently. Yet, he knew with growing conviction that the answers he sought might be more than he could withstand. Lily watched him, her face ashen in the soft glow. She looked adrift, disoriented, as if she had stumbled into a dream, or, more likely, a nightmare, with no escape. I think I should leave, she managed, her voice a mere exhalation. I don't feel well. Arthur nodded, his mind reeling. He couldn't absorb any more tonight. He required time to process, to disentangle the knotted threads of his emotions. Yes, he agreed, his tone devoid of inflection. Perhaps that would be best. He watched her depart, her silhouette framed in the doorway, a living question mark against the encroaching darkness. The lullaby, Alara's lullaby, reverberated in his mind, a haunting refrain that had once offered solace and now, an unsettling and profound disquiet. He was no longer certain who Lily Meadows was, or what she sought. He only knew that she possessed a key to a past he was both desperate to comprehend and terrified to unlock. Whispers of connection. The echo of that lullaby lingered, a frigid draft that withered Arthur's burgeoning fondness for Lily. A constant vigilance seized him, each day adding a fresh layer to the anxiety coiled within. It wasn't merely the melody anymore. He noticed the uncanny knack she possessed for eliciting smiles from Tilly after minor mishaps, a maneuver Alara had perfected, involving a goofy face and a playful raspberry on the injured spot. He saw the Baroque block structures she helped Thomas erect, mirroring Alara's architectural doodles from her old sketchpad. One afternoon, he discovered Lily and the twins immersed in a lively fairy tea party. Tilly, draped in a chaotic assortment of scarves and beads, meticulously poured phantom tea into acorn caps, while Thomas, surprisingly spirited, arranged petals on a verdant stone. From her perch on a weathered tree stump, Lily spun a vibrant yarn about impish sprites and articulate beasts. Arthur, captivated, observed Lily adopt a peculiar inflection for a cantankerous badger character, a reedy, almost nasal tone. It was precisely the same voice Alara had employed, an affectation she'd attributed to their neighbor, Mr. Henderson, though it always felt distinctly, intrinsically hers. The color fled from Arthur's face. Feigning a sudden wave of illness, he retreated to his study, desperate for answers. Direct confrontation with Lily was out of the question, at least for now. He needed more than unsettling reverberations of the past. He needed verifiable evidence. He began, predictably, with a futile internet search. A perfunctory query for Lily Meadows yielded only generic social media profiles containing blurred photographs and meager biographical information. He dug deeper, plumbing online databases, hunting for death notices, birth certificates, anything that might illuminate her origins. He unearthed several Lily Meadowses, none matching her age or physical characteristics. It was as though she had simply sprung into existence. Days bled into weeks, Arthur's scrutiny deepening into obsession. Hours vanished online as he disregarded work, meals, even the twins themselves. The house, formerly resonating with joy and the comforting fragrance of Lily's pastries, now throbbed with a palpable tension. Arthur had become an apparition in his own home, stalked by memories and Lily's unfathomable presence. That Sunday, Mrs. Higgins arrived for tea. A constant since Alara's passing, she provided unwavering support, a comforting maternal figure who invariably soothed the children's anxieties. As they sat bathed in the living room's sunlight, sipping Earl Grey and sampling scones, Mrs. Higgins turned to Arthur, a kind smile playing on her lips. "Lily is such a blessing, Arthur," she observed, her eyes sparkling. "The children simply adore her, and she's brought back such joy into this house." Arthur managed a wan smile. "She has." Mrs. Higgins paused, her expression softening. "You know, Arthur," she continued, her voice quiet, "there are moments when I look at her, and she reminds me so deeply of Alara. It's not just the way she tends to the children, but something more fundamental. A certain gentleness in her gaze, a specific way she cocks her head as she listens. It's almost eerie, really." Arthur's heart jolted in his chest. His grip tightened on his teacup, his knuckles widening. He forced himself to meet Mrs. Higgins' gaze, searching for any hint of suspicion or malice. He found only warmth and compassion. "You think so, Eleanor?" he asked, his voice a mere breath. "I do," she affirmed, nodding deliberately. "Of course, she's uniquely herself, completely individual. However, there's a resonance, a whisper of Alara in her being. It's reassuring, in a strange way. Like a facet of Alara remains here, watching over us." "Reassuring?" Arthur felt anything but. Mrs. Higgins' words landed like a physical blow, demolishing his remaining denial. He had clung to the hope, however unrealistic, that he was simply projecting his sorrow onto Lily, discerning what he wished to perceive. But now, hearing it echoed by another, by someone who had known Alara intimately, the reality became unavoidable. Lily was connected to Alara, intrinsically. But how? And why? The questions churned within him, a vortex of dread and uncertainty. He had to uncover the truth, regardless of the pain it might inflict. He was compelled to unravel the enigma of Lily Meadows, even if it meant confronting the specters of his past and risking everything he cherished. The music box's revelation. Sunbeams, thick with airborne dust, lanced through the gloom of the forgotten attic. Lily waved away the particles, a dry cough escaping her lips. Arthur had practically begged her to tackle this sanctuary of Abernathy relics, a space he himself seemed unwilling to brave. "Be careful," he'd murmured, his usual joviality replaced with unusual gravity. "There are things up there." Things, indeed. Cobwebs draped every surface like ghostly shrouds. In a shadowed corner, a rocking horse with a vacant socket stared into the middle distance. Discarded mementos, outmoded garments spilled from carton after carton. Undeterred, Lily sought solace in transforming chaos into order, a skill she now desperately needed. Truthfully, she craved distraction, something to quell the disquieting feeling of familiarity that haunted her within these walls. After an hour of focused labor, a small, ornate box materialized beneath a jumble of tarnished tinsel and faded baubles. Carved with roses and twining foliage, the aged wood radiated quiet elegance. A music box. Intrigued, Lily wiped away years of accumulated grime, uncovering a small, tarnished brass key. Tentatively, she wound it. A delicate air shimmered through the attic. The lullaby, the complete song. Not merely the snatch of melody she recalled, but verse after verse, a haunting composition that plucked at buried chords within her, resonances she couldn't quite name. Tears stung her eyes. She hadn't known how deeply she'd forgotten, or perhaps never truly absorbed, the complete piece. The tune enveloped her, a comforting yet poignant embrace. Arthur appeared in the doorway, his expression a complicated tapestry of curiosity and unease. Of course, he'd heard it. The lullaby that had threaded its way through his sleepless nights now drifted from the attic, carried on the still air. I found this," Lily managed, her voice a mere thread. She extended the music box, her fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. He accepted it, his gaze riveted to the intricate carvings. Recognition dawned. Ilaris, a gift from her grandmother. He hadn't laid eyes on it in ages. Assumed it lost, cast aside during one of their many relocations. The music ceased, leaving a lingering silence. Arthur rotated the box in his hands, searching for purchase against the rising tide of memory. "It was Ilara's," he stated, his voice thick with unshed tears. Lily offered a slow nod. "It's a beautiful song." He swallowed convulsively. "There's more to it." He recalled Ilara revealing the hidden compartment, a secret recess known only to her. His fingers fumbled along the bottom of the box, tracing the almost undetectable seam. He applied pressure. A small panel gave way, exposing a concealed niche. Inside, resting on faded velvet, lay a photograph. Arthur gingerly lifted it out. The picture was time-worn, the edges softened with age, the image bleached by years of exposure, but the subjects remained clear. Two young girls, perhaps 6 or 7, stood shoulder to shoulder, arms entwined. One was undeniably Ilara, her characteristic smile and bright eyes piercing the dimness. The other was Lily, younger, sporting the same wide-eyed gaze and telltale dimple gracing her left cheek. Their faces pressed together, their connection vivid even across the chasm of time. Arthur stood transfixed, his thoughts spiraling. The music box, the lullaby, and now this. The scattered fragments were coalescing, but the resulting image was far more unsettling than he could have possibly conceived. "Lily," he started, his voice roughened with emotion. "Who is this?" He extended the photograph, his hand betraying a slight tremor. Lily accepted the print, her breath snagging in her throat. She scrutinized the image, her eyes widening in disbelief. The girl beside Ilara, it was undeniably her. Yet she possessed no recollection of this. No memory of Ilara, or the music box, or the lullaby until a mere handful of weeks ago. A wave of vertigo threatened to topple her. I don't know," she stammered, her voice shaking. "I don't understand." But a spark, a vestige of a forgotten time, flickered within. A memory of peals of laughter, whispered secrets, a bond forged in childhood's innocent light. Arthur's stare was unwavering, intense. He registered the bewilderment in her expression, but something else too, a glimmer of recognition, a hint of a dormant past stirring to life. "You must know," he pressed, his tone low and urgent. "This isn't happenstance, Lily. This isn't just coincidence." The weight of his declaration, the weight of the photograph, the weight of the lullaby, all crashed over Lily. She crumpled to her knees, the photograph clutched tight against her chest. The attic, previously a repository of lost memories, now felt like a confining cell, holding her captive within a past she couldn't decipher, a past inextricably intertwined with Arthur and his late wife. "I wish I did," she whimpered, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. "I truly wish I did." Sisters reunited in song. The photograph was a fragile relic, its edges softened by time, yet the image retained a poignant clarity. Two little girls, scarcely 5 years old, stood hand in hand before a venerable oak. One radiated Alara's spirit with those bright, knowing eyes and that irrepressible grin. The other, Lily, a miniature Lily, yes, bearing the same tender curve to her mouth, the same constellation of freckles dusted across her nose. "It can't be real," Lily breathed, her voice a tremulous thread. She reached out, fingertips feathering the surface, as if afraid to obliterate the delicate truth it held. A peculiar tremor ran through Arthur, a confluence of disbelief and nascent recognition. He recalled Alara mentioning his sister, a casualty of the war, torn apart during an evacuation, lost to the swirling chaos. This sister, Clara, named for their grandmother, she recalled with a bittersweet longing. He'd previously dismissed it as a faded childhood echo, a ghost story of the past. But now, he frantically pawed through the box, fingers scrambling. Beneath a jumble of age correspondence, another photograph emerged, more posed this time. Two women, one elder, one younger, stood self-consciously in a studio. On the reverse, pinned in Alara's elegant hand, a single word, "Mama." Alara's mother, Arthur murmured, the puzzle pieces clicking into alignment. He turned to Lily, her face drained of color, her eyes wide pools reflecting both astonishment and familiarity. "My mother," Lily affirmed, her voice a bare whisper. She never spoke of Alara, only that I'd been rescued by a kind family, one who could provide a better life. I have fragmented memories of a different existence, a grand house, a sweeping garden, but it's all shrouded in mist, like a half-remembered dream. A dizzying wave threatened to engulf Arthur. He collapsed onto a nearby trunk covered with dust. The evacuation, the pandemonium, that must have been it. Separation in the whirlwind, and your mother, presuming you lost forever, must have. His voice faltered, unable to articulate the unspoken terror that haunted Alara's recollections of her missing sibling. Lily crumpled to her knees, the precious photographs cradled in her hands. It's impossible. I've found them. I stumbled upon my own kin." That evening, Arthur placed a call to Mrs. Higgins, his voice constricted with emotion as he relayed the unfolding revelation. The lullaby, the unearthed photograph, the entwined history. Mrs. Higgins, her calm, a steadfast beacon, offered patient ears, her quiet affirmations the only interjections. "Bring her over, Arthur," she instructed when the tale concluded. "Bring Lily and the children. We need to talk, to share, and perhaps we need to sing." The air crackled with a palpable tension as they entered Mrs. Higgins' snug living room. Thomas and Tilly, sensing the gravity of the moment, clung tightly to Lily's legs. Mrs. Higgins, her face a canvas of mingled sorrow and elation, guided them to the worn armchair nestled by the hearth. "So," she began, her tone gentle, Alara always clung to the belief that Clara lived on, somewhere out there, a flickering flame of hope, nurtured even when others had surrendered. She fixed her gaze upon Lily, her eyes brimming with profound comprehension. "Welcome home, Clara. A homecoming long overdue." Tears cascaded down Lily's cheeks as she rushed to embrace Mrs. Higgins, a sob escaping her lips. Sensing her distress, Thomas and Tilly encircled her with their small arms, patting her back with comforting gestures. Arthur observed, a lump constricting his own throat. He had become so engrossed in unraveling the enigma, so tethered to the past, he'd almost failed to recognize the present. He almost forfeited the chance for healing. The following hours were spent painstakingly piecing together fractured memories. Mrs. Higgins, blessed with a remarkable recall, filled in the gaps in Lily's fragmented recollections. She painted vivid pictures of the opulent home, the boundless garden, the overwhelming love that had permeated their lives before the war irrevocably shattered their world. She shared tales of Alara and Clara's shared childhood, their inseparable games, their profound connection. As dusk deepened, Mrs. Higgins turned towards Lily. "That lullaby," she whispered, her voice tender. Alara adored that lullaby. Her mother sang it to her every single night. Lily nodded, her gaze drawn to the dancing flames in the fireplace. I remember it now. Dimly, yes, but I do recall it. "Sing it for us, Lily," Thomas implored, his voice barely audible. Lily paused, then inhaled deeply. She closed her eyes, and the melody emerged, hesitant at first, gathering strength and assurance as it flowed. Her voice, crystalline and pure, resonated through the room with haunting beauty. Arthur joined in, his voice thick with emotion, recalling the countless instances he had heard Alara sing the very same tune to their children. Thomas and Tilly, their initial timidity dissolving, added their youthful voices to the chorus, their sweet harmonies blending seamlessly with Lily's and Arthur's. Mrs. Higgins hummed along, her eyes shut, a serene smile gracing her lips. As the final notes dissolved into the stillness, a profound sense of tranquility descended upon the room. The oppressive weight of grief, which had lingered for so long, seemed to dissipate, replaced by a fragile tendril of hope. They remained damaged, still bearing the scars of loss, but they were united. And within that shared song, in that reunion of sisters parted and found, they discovered a glimmer of healing, a promise of a brighter horizon. Arthur gazed at Lily, at Clara, at his children, and he knew, with a certainty that blossomed within him, that somehow they would endure.